Palestinian uprising, Intifada. It's an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the aim was really clear. Aims. First, they wanted all of Palestine, as they call it, from the river to the sea. They don't want part of it, like the PLO was prepared to settle for. They wanted all of it. They wanted it under their control, and they wanted an Islamized Palestinian society. So they see themselves, and the Muslim Brotherhood set them up to be an armed group, as they would put it, resisting Israeli military occupation, as the Israelis would put it, a terrorist group. And the goal is to take all the land, to Islamize their own society, and to, first of all, marginalize and then supplant Yasser Arafat's PLO as the leadership of the Palestinian people. Simple.
And why did they have appeal on that front? Was Arafat seen as, why did Palestinians turn away from Arafat?
Yasser Arafat, by no means a figure that Israel has any great love for, had any great love for, was always deeply suspicious of. But his PLO had, in the 1990s, for many different reasons, decided that they would sit down and talk, that they would negotiate with Israel. They agreed the Oslo Peace Accords in the 1990s. They were at the table. And Hamas did not want that. It did not want to take some of the land. It did not want to see a more secular, more moderate Palestinian Authority, a liberation organization, prepared to share the land. Hamas wanted all of it. They are the hardliners of hardliners. So they set about laying down the roots, establishing their network in the 70s and 80s through soup kitchens and social work, and a political wing and a religious wing through the mosques, laying down the roots. And then in the 1990s, effectively they bombed the Oslo Peace Accords into oblivion, blowing up buses, sending gunmen into Israel. The Israeli right wing obviously assassinated their own prime minister, so this wasn't like it was one hardline group trying to derail the peace. There are people on both sides who want all or nothing. So the 90s, it bombed the peace process into oblivion, and in the 2000s it escalated it to the point where Yasser Arafat and his successor Mahmoud Abbas became more and more marginalized. Nothing to show for negotiations, nothing to show for peace talks. If you talk to the Palestinian leadership over many years, they'll say, it's an incredibly difficult job we have here. We have nothing to show the younger generation for years of peace talks. We have no Palestinian statehood. We have no freedom. We're under Israeli occupation. What do we have to say when they say...
Let me ask you about a charge that is often made, which is that in its early years, the Israeli government actually helped in some ways Hamas to flourish. Is that true?
We looked into this when writing the book, and I think and Israeli officials told us, it's certainly fair to say, I think they regarded the early Islamists in Gaza as their enemy's enemy, undermining Yasser Arafat, a useful tool. So they turned a blind eye. We certainly didn't establish that they armed them, but certainly Israeli officials told us, we warned them, we warned our leaders, do not let these people rise in Gaza. We've seen what happened in Iran, but the word came down, Arafat is the threat, we don't trust Arafat, and our enemy's enemy. Divide and rule.
With 30 seconds, but I want to ask you, do you believe that a majority of people in Gaza support Hamas? There's a lot of complicated polling here, but I just wanted you to give us a bottom line. How would you describe, popular support for Hamas?
It is impossible to say. Certainly there have been no elections since 2006. Anyone who trusts an opinion poll run by one side or the other, good luck. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can say Hamas was under a lot of criticism for its government. I think what it's done is calculated that by this shock and awful, terrible scenes we've seen, at the end of the day, people may blame Israel for what's happened, and that they may end up benefiting out of this, and that's going to be played out in the coming weeks and months.
We have to leave it at that. Stephen Farrow, we'll have to have you back on so much more to talk about. Thank you all for being part of my program this week. I will see you next week.
Oh.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today.
Salonpas, makers of powerful pain relief patches for 89 years, believes in continuous improvement, like rounded corners that resist peeling, with an array of active ingredients and sizes to relieve your pain. Salonpas, it's good medicine.
I brought in Ensure Max Protein with 30 grams of protein.
Those who tried me felt more energy in just 2 weeks. Here, I'll take that.
Ensure Max Protein. 30 grams protein, 1 gram sugar, 25 vitamins and minerals, and nutrients for immune health.
Tonight, Anderson Cooper is on the ground in Israel at the site where tragedy struck, meeting with survivors and family members of the missing.
Do you believe she may still be alive?
I still have hope.
The whole story with Anderson Cooper, tonight at 10.
When I look into your eyes, it's like watching the night sky, all beautiful sunrise. Oh, there's so much they hold.
It's hard to imagine that this powerful, beautiful animal needs our help, but they are being killed for their skin and bones, and their homes are being destroyed. But there is hope. Tigers are at the heart of so many delicate ecosystems. When you protect a tiger, you also protect thousands of species and people that rely on the same habitat. When we protect tigers, we all benefit. Learn how you can make a difference.
I'm MJ Lee at the White House, and this is CNN.
Striking back.
Hamas is ISIS, and just as ISIS was crushed, so too will Hamas be crushed.
Israel lays siege to Gaza as it reels from the horrific Hamas attacks. Is a full-scale ground invasion imminent? Plus, united front.
This is an act of sheer evil. We must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel.
Biden pledges unequivocal support as another global crisis tests his foreign policy instincts. And a House very divided.
We really need to get our act together. It's bordering on the absurd.
I think we're playing with fire, and we need to stop playing games.
As a leaderless Congress devolves into chaos, can any Republican get the votes to be Speaker? Inside Politics, the fast reporting from inside the corridors of power starts now.
Good morning. Welcome to Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raju. We'll get to politics later in the show, but at this hour, major developments to tell you about in the Mideast. Overnight, Israel says it struck more than 100 military targets inside Gaza, including Hamas headquarters, military compounds, and missile launchers. Hamas responded by firing rockets at the Israel city of Sderot. The IDF also says a missile strike killed a Hamas commander who allegedly led deadly attacks on Kibbutz Niram in Israel over the last weekend. The overnight strike comes as Israel forces are preparing for, quote, the next stages of the war. And as conditions inside Gaza continue to deteriorate, with water and food supplies running dangerously low, Doctors Without Borders is warning of a complete catastrophe in Gaza. In Israel, a bipartisan Senate delegation led by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was forced to take shelter today from a Hamas attack. A reminder, Schumer tweeted, of the need for the U.S. to help Israel defend itself. And the Pentagon says the second U.S. carrier group led to the region, led by the USS Eisenhower, is deploying to the region as Iran warns of far-reaching consequences if Israel doesn't stop its attacks on Gaza. The number of Americans killed in the Hamas attacks has now risen to 29, and with at least 15 U.S. citizens remain unaccounted for and are potentially among the hostages held by Hamas inside Gaza. This morning on CNN's State of the Union, President Biden's national security advisor says recovering those American hostages is a top priority for the administration.
The president has been very clear that he has no higher priority than getting Americans back safe, Americans who are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza right now. We know there are 15 unaccounted for Americans, but we cannot confirm the precise number of American hostages being held by Hamas at this time. All we can do is to continue to work closely with the Israeli government on hostage recovery options, which we are doing.
We're also hearing more heartbreaking stories from the families of Israelis who are desperate for word on their family members who were kidnapped by Hamas.
I don't know if there's even a word that can describe how it feels to watch your grandmother, your 85-year-old grandmother, being kidnapped. We're very worried about her. And, we haven't heard anything since this horrible video. We're trying to stay positive and help. Hope there's going to be help and she will survive this.
I want to bring in CNN's Sarah Seidner, who's reporting today from Tel Aviv. Sarah, what are you hearing from officials there? And is there an expectation that this ground invasion into Gaza is imminent?
Yes. I mean, I think the clear answer to that is yes, it is imminent. Israel saying that it is prepared for the next stages of war. That is how the IDF put it. But they have amassed a huge number of soldiers on the border. We're talking hundreds of thousands of soldiers who have, many of them reservists, who've come back to Israel or who live in Israel and have been called up to duty. You're seeing some of those pictures now of a tank moving along the border with Gaza. We are seeing all sorts of preparations underway. And we're also, seeing airstrikes that have been going on through the overnight. And conversely, we have also received some incoming rocket fire from Hamas into Israel, and actually very close to us here in Tel Aviv. There is no doubt that a ground incursion is expected and is imminent after a 24-hour warning was given back on Thursday night, by the way, to those people, residents living in Gaza, to leave northern Gaza and somehow get to safety. It is one of the most densely populated places on earth. That seemed an impossibility, and indeed is, according to the UN, an impossibility, but there is some movement or people trying to get out from the Rafah border. That is the border with Egypt. There is fear, there is anxiety in Gaza in a way that is certainly palpable for those who are there. There is also concern on, of course, this side of the border here in Israel. People are afraid for their family members as those rocket attacks keep coming, and afraid for those who are soldiers who will likely be going in on foot and in tanks into Gaza. Manu?
And Sarah, tell us about this humanitarian situation that is developing now inside of Gaza.
It's a disaster. I mean, the UN is very clear in saying, look, for the last 7 days, there has been no water flowing into Gaza. There has been no food allowed into Gaza. There has been no fuel allowed into Gaza, meaning that the electricity is completely out, with a few exceptions of people that have generators with a very large tank. But most of the city is dark. The hospitals are struggling. They don't have what they need. They have hundreds of people that they have been treating, and so it is a disaster. The water is starting to run out where people do not have potable drinking water. We did get some news today. The National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, speaking to our Jake Tapper, said actually he's talked to his Israeli counterparts, and they have said they are turning the water back on in Gaza. That will be some relief to the families and the people trying to just survive all this, who are innocent civilians trying to get through this war without being killed, maimed, or getting sick because of the situation there. It is a humanitarian crisis, and it will likely get worse, Manu.
A heartbreaking situation. Sarah Seidner, reporting from Tel Aviv, thank you for that report. And here with me now to share their expertise and insight, CNN Global Affairs analyst Kim Dozier and Axios political and foreign policy reporter Bharat Ravi. Thank you both for joining us. Kim, I want to start with you. You've been covering wars for some time, for many years now, and there's this talk about the U.S. sending these carriers into the region, the second set of carriers. There's also coming as Iran is warning of these far-reaching consequences if this war doesn't end. Hezbollah and Israel have exchanged some fire in the Lebanese border. How concerning is it at the moment for officials in the region and here in the U.S. that this could turn into a broader conflict?
Well, those carriers are there to send a signal to non-state actors like Iranian-backed Lebanese Hezbollah in Lebanon and to factions within Syria that are armed with Iranian missiles, according to Israeli officials, that if they decide to get into the fight, they could face American firepower. It's also a message to Iran itself, not to think about taking advantage of this situation. But if Hezbollah does get involved at the border, right now it seems to be Hezbollah is just using mostly harassing attacks that engage the Israeli military, making it concentrate on two different fronts, making it split its assets like the Iron Dome assets. But if that steps up and Israel has to split its effort and all of its civilians across the country are facing missile fire from the north, that's when you get into the game-changing multiple-front war.
And Brock, you've been covering Israel for your entire career. In fact, just moving here a couple months ago from Tel Aviv. What are you hearing from the Israelis about, as they weigh this and plan this ground invasion, how much are they weighing that this could turn into a broader conflict in the region?
I think that for months, when you spoke to Israeli defense officials, the Prime Minister's office, you heard the same phrase, and this is a multi-arena conflict. They were preparing for such a thing. They did not think it would happen like that. They thought it might the West Bank might explode first, maybe Lebanon might explode first. They did not look at Gaza. But a multi-front conflict was something that they were talking about for a long, long time.
And look, this all as they weigh this ground invasion, plan this ground invasion, this is going to be incredibly complicated in this densely populated area in Gaza. I mean, the U.S. had bad lessons from Iraq going into places where similar situation in terms of the population and innocent civilians there. How complicated will this ground invasion be in Gaza?
Well, Israeli officials have set themselves a very difficult goal of taking out the Hamas leadership and disabling the Hamas militarily and politically. Hamas has bragged that it has more than 300 miles of underground tunnels. It has factories that make everything from Kalashnikovs to missiles. All of that needs to be found. And just for comparison, think about the battle for Mosul in Iraq that ISIS took over. It's about the same size and population of the territory of northern Gaza. It took Iraqi and U.S. and Western forces 3 years to clear that out. So we're looking at what could be a long campaign.
I mean, Israel is trying to decapitate the Hamas leadership. I mean, what if they're successful in that? What's the long-term strategy for what this war will look like if Hamas, the leadership, is eliminated?
I don't think anybody knows. I don't think not that I don't think, I know that there was no discussion yet about the next step and about the exit strategy and about long term, because everything right now is focused on the goal of first taking out Hamas, dismantle its military infrastructure. To be honest, I'm not sure that such a thing is even possible. Okay, and we have to understand. We make this comparison between Hamas and ISIS when it comes to its cruelty, and I totally agree with that. But Hamas is not ISIS in the meaning that it has a political base among the population. It's not like this external actor that came one day and took everybody hostage. It won an election in 2005. So I think people have to understand that there's a broad base of support for Hamas in Gaza, even if there's a large part of the population that rejects what Hamas did. So it's not exactly like ISIS.
Now, there is an idea of inviting the Palestinian Authority in afterwards to maybe take over. But the worry is then that would make the Palestinian Authority look like Israeli stooges that are doing the Israeli bidding. And already the Palestinian Authority and Hamas both, they got elected and then they haven't held follow-up elections. They've just held on to power. So in many ways, with their own people, the Palestinian Authority has just as little credibility as Hamas does.
And the Palestinian Authority can barely stand in the West Bank already. So sending their people to Gaza, I don't see that.
Yeah, look, I mean, this all comes, of course, as we talked about the humanitarian crisis playing out. I mean, 2,300 people have been killed, including 700 children, 423,000 people displaced, and buildings destroyed, widespread power outages, difficulties in getting clean water and food supplies. The U.S. has been unequivocal so far in its support for Israel, but the question will be the limits of the support if it turns into a larger scale humanitarian disaster. This is what the president said about it.
We're making sure Israel has what it needs to defend itself and respond to these attacks. It's also a priority for me to urgently address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. You know, we can't lose sight of the fact that the overwhelming majority of Palestinians had nothing to do with Hamas and Hamas's appalling attacks, and they're suffering as a result as well.
Yeah, I mean, is there a limit to the U.S. support here?
Let's be clear that the U.S. has to support Israel in this situation, but it is going to get worse. When you try to flush that many people south, if humanitarian aid could get in, the best case scenario would be open-air UN-style refugee camps. And water, food is already running out in many locations. One of the things this is doing is these images are galvanizing support across the Arab world among a young Arab population that had really not paid much attention to the Palestinian crisis. That's why all these Gulf leaders were able to move ahead on normalization plans with Israel, because their population wasn't paying attention. These images, a whole new generation is paying attention, and that is going to become a problem for the U.S. to come.
Meanwhile, I mean, how are Israelis viewing how Netanyahu is dealing with this right now, and what does this mean for him in leading this country?
First, Netanyahu's political situation these days is the worst it has been since 2006. Okay, in the last poll that was done just the other day, the Likud got only 19 seats, which is, again, the worst since 2006. And I think that we have to look at the big picture for a second. 9 months ago, Netanyahu returned to the Prime Minister's office, started this judicial overhaul that ripped the Israeli society apart, weakened Israel economically, militarily, internationally, and Netanyahu was warned time and time again, both in private and in public, by his Minister of Defense. He fired his Minister of Defense because he warned him that such a scenario could happen, because Israel's enemies were looking at the Israeli society being ripped apart and said, you know what, maybe now it's a good time to challenge them. And this is exactly what happened. So while there was a tactical surprise last Saturday with this attack, strategically, it was not surprising at all, because all of Israel's intelligence services said, again, in private and in public, that such a scenario can happen.
So many questions about the intelligence failure that has led to this crisis that's unfolded.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying, that it's not only, there was an intelligence failure, obviously, but it was more than that. The political echelon took a decision for 9 months to focus on something that is completely unrelated to Israel's security, and that was negative to Israel's security, and this is where we are right now.
So much fault there. Thank you both for coming in and talking about this morning. And up next, my brand new reporting from inside the House GOP chaos and Jim Jordan's ongoing battle for the speakership.
Inside Politics Sunday, brought to you by ADT. Brilliantly safe. Now, ADT professionally installs Google Nest products.
Cool. You're all set.
So your home is safe and smart.
We're gonna miss you.
You can check in on your home.
Our miss system, we should go.
Manage your system from virtually anywhere. And get intelligent alerts like when a package has arrived. When the most trusted name in home security adds the intelligence of Google, you have a home with no worries. Brought to you by ADT.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today. It's true. Contacts are great until they get dry. So we created new BioTrue Hydration Boost for contacts for a boost of moisture that lasts up to 8 hours. So all kinds of contacts can stay comfortable throughout the day. And it's preservative-free. Stay BioTrue to your eyes.
Your best defense against erosion and cavities is strong enamel. Nothing beats it. New Pro Enamel Active Shield actively shields the enamel to defend against erosion and cavities. I think that this product is a game changer for my patients. It really works.
With Pi Prime, you can make pizza here, back here, and even way up here. You can make them fancy, like this, or keep it simple, like this. You can share with friends, or keep it all to yourself. You can be an artisan pizza pro, or maybe less so. You can do pizza your way with an oven that's simple enough to be your first and powerful enough to be your last. High Prime Pizza Oven by Solo Stove.
I wish for the amazing new iPhone 15 Pro. Sean.
Do you mean this one, the one with titanium? Switch to Verizon. You can trade in any iPhone and get the new iPhone 15 Pro on them.
It's your last chance to trade in any iPhone for a new iPhone 15 Pro on us, only on Verizon.
At AG, we believe that nourishing your whole body is key to unlocking your vitality as you age, allowing you to thrive both physically and mentally. This is foundational nutrition made simple with AG1.
Why did we choose Safelight? We were loading our SUV when crack. Safelight came right to us, and we could see exactly when they'd arrive, with a replacement we could trust. That service the way we want it.
Safelight repair, Safelight replace.
There are more identity threats than you realize. LifeLock alerts you and works to fix problems with a dedicated restoration specialist. Go to lifelock.com.
I saw what you've been posting. Hitler was right. I didn't teach you that. You hide behind your screen and you're spewing all this hatred. You got something you want to say? Get out of the truck and say it to their faces.
When the details take precedence, the rest falls perfectly into place. We strip away everything but the essential, and what we're left with are thoughtful bedrooms for modern living. Thuma.
We're standing by for a press conference from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. We'll bring that to you live when it begins. And now with Israel still reeling from the horrific scenes of violence after Hamas attack, President Biden had a clear and unequivocal message for Americans, Israel, and the world.
This is an act of sheer evil. So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse.
That pledge of support reportedly watched live by nearly half of Israeli households is winning praise inside Israel, including on Tel Aviv billboards with the message, "Thank you, Mr. President." In a phone call yesterday, their fifth since the conflict began, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked Biden for his quote, deep and unconditional support for Israel. But with the outbreak of yet another global crisis putting Biden's foreign policy experience to the test, a new CNN poll out this morning finds Americans, as they are on most things, split down the middle, with 47% saying they trust Biden to make the right choices amid the Israel crisis versus 53% who don't. All right, joining me here in the studio are my excellent panelists here. Guys, thank you all for joining us this morning. Tamara, you covered the White House, and you were watching President Biden dealing with this very closely. The White House has a lot to balance here. Obviously, the president has a re-election campaign. Domestic politics are always front and center of the mind of voters. How do you assess how the president is handling this, and how much this is taking the focus away from the other pressing domestic priorities at the moment for the White House?
So President Biden's foreign policy experience is a big part of his political identity. And the president and his team are clearly leaning into this crisis. They don't really have a choice but to lean into it. And President Biden is quite pro-Israel. He is arguably more pro-Israel than the center of his party, than many parts of his party. But he He is leaning into this, owning this, delivering multiple speeches about it. He'll be on 60 Minutes tonight. And in this coming week, we expect him to send up a request for funding to Congress, though Congress can't actually pass legislation right now, but to send up a request for funding for both Israel and Ukraine, because the White House and the president don't want to let Ukraine drop. Having foreign policy success doesn't necessarily translate to domestic political benefit, but having foreign policy failures can become a leadership failure, and that can translate to domestic political problems.
In our colleague Kevin Liptak wrote about this for CNN, talking about how he's juggling these foreign policy and domestic political challenges. Kevin writes in this piece, the dueling focuses, foreign and domestic, have at moments felt somewhat jarring. Biden's outrage at infuriating images emerging from Israel has translated into some of his most forceful public speaking as president, making it somewhat dissonant to hear him deliver more routine messages about airline fees, firefighter pay, and the manufacture of hydrogen. I mean, elections typically turn on domestic issues. Is it different this time, given what's happening in Ukraine, given what's happening here in Israel?
It could be, and I was actually just talking to a Republican who thought that maybe Israel would help, and the way that the president has presented himself in response to what happened could potentially help President Biden and hurt Republicans. And we saw how former President Trump reacted by calling Hezbollah very smart and going after Benjamin Netanyahu, and then having to quickly backtrack that because that's not something that a number of voters are.
Okay, we
are here at what is an extremely difficult and very tenuous time for the region in the wake of the slaughter perpetrated by Hamas. We came here with 4 key objectives: to make clear that the United States stands with Israel, to prevent the conflict from spreading to other places, to work on securing the release of hostages, including American citizens, and to address the humanitarian crisis that exists in Gaza. We started, as you know, in Israel, and it was important to make it very clear that the United States has Israel's back. We will stand with it today, tomorrow, and every day. And we're doing that in word and also in deed. I spent time with Prime Minister Netanyahu to go through the needs that Israel may have to make sure it can effectively defend itself. And you've already seen a lot of that assistance moving forward, and that's a conversation that will continue. Israel has the right, indeed it has the obligation to defend itself against these attacks from Hamas, and to try to do what it can to make sure that this never happens again. As I said in Tel Aviv, as President Biden has said, the way that Israel does this matters. Needs to do it in a way that affirms the shared values that we have for human life and human dignity, taking every possible precaution to avoid harming civilians. After we left Israel, we've gone now to, I think I've lost track, but to 6 countries in the region: Jordan, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, now here in Egypt. And the purpose of seeing all of our partners was first and foremost to listen to them, to hear how they're seeing this crisis, and to look at what we can do together to deal with many of the concerns that it's raised. What I've heard from virtually every partner was a determination, a shared view.
Audio? Oh, I think we lost our feed up there of Anthony Blinken. We'll try to bring that back when we can. He was speaking in Cairo after meeting with the Egyptian president there. CNN's Kimberly Dozier is back with me. Kimberly, what's your take on Secretary Blinken's comments right now, and why was it so important for him to meet with the Egyptian leaders at this key moment?
I think that Blinken is trying to keep communication open and keep this from becoming a multi-front war by listening to their concerns and trying to facilitate. Remember, there was some hope during this past week of facilitating a release of the women and children among the hostages being held by Hamas. But this was also a message from Blinken to Israel. He said that Israel has a right to defend itself, but added the way Israel does this matters. That is just a cautionary note to Israel over and over that it needs to be careful of civilian casualties And I think that's one of the reasons we've seen a delay to a pre-planned possible ground invasion over this weekend, though the weather also was apparently not favorable for it.
Thanks for that, Kimberly. Back here with me in the panel, I mean, this all comes as is playing out and how the U.S. will deal with this, how Democratic leaders, Republican leaders, and the White House. There's a new CNN poll out this morning that discusses about how Americans view how the president is dealing with this. I want to look at this. One interesting thing, how younger Democrats are less likely to trust Biden about Israel. There's trust. The question was about whether or not Biden they have trust that Biden will make the right decision on Israel. This is among Democrats over the age of 45, 50%. Under the age of 45, 18%. I mean, that is significantly different. Among Democratic voters, younger voters don't seem to trust Democrats Biden to make the right decision, but older voters do. What do you make of that?
Well, older voters do, but 50% is also not exactly overwhelming confidence in the president, right? And Manu, I think what you have there is Biden sort of squeezed on both sides, where younger voters don't trust him to handle this in a way that's consistent with their values, which tend to be more skeptical of Israel, far more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. And older voters, I don't think the poll literally says this, but you see this kind of feedback on Biden consistently, don't necessarily see him as having just the vigor and fortitude to handle difficult situations. You know, this is a president who most people who work in the world of policy see him as having handled the war in Ukraine exceptionally well, certainly relative to the sort of comparable crises in recent years. His polling numbers on that issue are not overwhelmingly positive. When you see a situation like this, where he goes out and gives this emphatically pro-Israel statement, every member of his administration is front and center dealing with this crisis, and getting 50% confidence among older Democrats, that is a real sign of skepticism in just this administration generally.
And meanwhile, Democrats, there have been some members on the left, far left of the Democratic caucus, who have been more outspoken in their criticism of Israel. They've gotten a lot of pushback and blowback, but there are a small number of Democrats who feel that way. Let's go with Jared Moskowitz, who's a Florida Democrat, who's a more moderate member, says about how Democrats are viewing this moment and the support within their party for Israel.
There's 212 Democrats, right, and 207 of them, 208 of them have been steadfast with Israel and always been steadfast with Israel. And so, look, the members that have not done that are wrong, but they are the minute. Quite frankly, some of the fringe on the left, have responded in a way that they're showing their true colors.
And there's one member on the left of the Democratic caucus who has disavowed his support for a socialist group in Michigan because of the way that they had messaged the war here and had some things that caused him alarm, showing you kind of how they are divided on the far left. Listen to this.
Behind all this talk, I saw anti-Semitism, I saw hate for Jews, and not their inability to accept what just happened, just trying to, almost, what should I say, glorify the terrorists. If that is how they want to look at this, I don't want to be a part of that.
You don't want to be associated with that part of your party anymore?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And we just got our feedback with Anthony Blinken. Here he is.
Moving forward, including practical ideas on getting assistance to Palestinians in Gaza who are in need, but also good and important conversations about the future and where we hope ultimately together we can bring this in a much more positive way. In terms of the conference that Egypt is putting forward, look, we think these kinds of initiatives are good ideas. Anything that can look in practical ways at how we can help get assistance to Palestinians who need it, that can look at ways to ensure that this conflict doesn't spread, that can look to the future as well, I think is a positive thing. And what's very clear is this: there are two very different visions for the future and what the Middle East can and should be. There's a vision that we very strongly espouse that has countries in the region normalizing their relations, integrating, working together in common purpose, and upholding and bringing forth the rights and aspirations of the Palestinian people. That's one vision. It's very clear. There's another vision that Hamas has demonstrated in the most horrific way. And that's a vision of death, of destruction, of nihilism, of terrorism. That's a vision that does nothing to advance aspirations for Palestinians, that does nothing to help create better futures for people in the region, and does everything to bring total darkness to everyone that it's able to affect. So I think the paths are clear, the visions are clear, and I have no doubt what path people, the overwhelming majority of people in the region, will choose and will prefer if given the opportunity. So our responsibility, all of us who believe in that first path, and that's everyone I talk to, our responsibility is to make it real, to bring it to life, to make it a clear affirmative choice. And that's what we're determined to do. We have to get through this crisis first, and we're working to do that. But we also have to get back in a very clear, practical way to that vision, to making it real. If we do that, everyone in this region will be in a much better place, and so will the rest of the world. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
There's Antony Blinken speaking from Cairo after meeting with the Egyptian president, speaking in very forceful terms there, indicating U.S. support behind Israel as he speaks to leaders in the region. Kim Dozier is back with us now. Talk to us about Blinken's strategy here. He's been going around the region trying to align support behind Israel's cause here. What do you make of his strategy and what he's been doing behind the scenes?
He's embraced Israel and the Israeli public in their time of pain, reminding them that he's there when he was visiting as a Jew as well as a U.S. official. But he's also having tough conversations with Arab leaders in private. He's setting himself up to be someone who praises in public and censures in private. This means that when things go wrong on the ground in Gaza, he's building up the trust so he will be able to say to the Israeli government, you need to stop this, you need to change this. And we've already seen the results of that Israel's turning the water back on. So that is one sign that this strategy is working.
Yeah, and the humanitarian crisis will continue to play out, and the U.S. will have to play a key role in dealing with those in the region. Kimberly Dozier, thanks for that. And coming up, more about the House GOP divisions and the fact that there's no speaker right now, and Congress cannot act in providing aid to Israel at this key moment. More, thanks.
Green Pan Slow Cooker turns your counter into a do-it-all kitchen. Plus, it's on sale for a limited time. Get maximum flavor with innovative in-pot browning. And Green Pan's PFAS-free non-stick makes cooking worry-free. The ultimate slow cooker. That's Green Pan.
Let me be direct. You're watching football wrong. What do you call a guy in face paint that can't get the game? A clown.
Sorry, what app was it again? No, just give me a second.
Amateurs.
Oh, sorry, everybody.
DirecTV Sports Central gives you access to every game. So you never have to compromise on game day.
Was that necessary?
I was just illustrating a point.
Visit DirecTV.com for up to a $400 reward card.
Okay.
How do you make a blood pressure support tube from the #1 selling beet brand even more effective and more delicious? By making it with grapes. That's right, super grapes, supercharged with CoQ10 and a powerful grapeseed extract for nearly 2 times more effective blood pressure support than diet and exercise alone. Discover super grapes with CoQ10, 2-in-1 heart support, all in one irresistible chew. Get a free month supply at supergrapes.com.
Your best defense against erosion and cavities is strong enamel. Nothing beats it. New Pro Enamel Active Shield actively shields the enamel to defend against erosion and cavities. I think that this product is a game changer for my patients. It really works.
Why did we choose Safelight? We were loading our SUV when crack. Safelight came right to us, and we could see exactly when they'd arrive. With a replacement we could trust. That service the way we want it.
Safelight repair, Safelight replace.
There's challenges, and I love overcoming challenges.
when Better Money Habits content first started coming out, it expanded what I could do. For Special Olympics athletes with developmental needs,
thousands of Bank of America employees like Scott spend countless hours volunteering to teach people how to reach their financial goals.
It felt good. It felt like I could take on the whole world.
What would you like the power to do?
It's easy to think that all money managers are pretty much the same. But at Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Different how? You sell high commission investment products, right?
Nope. Fisher avoids them.
Well, you must earn commissions on trades.
Never at Fisher.
Okay, then you probably sneak in some hidden and layered fees.
No, we structure our fees so we do better when our clients do better. That might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Tonight, Anderson Cooper is on the ground in Israel at the site where tragedy struck, meeting with survivors and family members of the missing.
Do you believe she may still be alive?
I still have hope.
The whole story with Anderson Cooper, tonight at 10.
I grew up in the Fraser Valley, so when I get a chance, I come home to explore what's new. Welcome to the Township of Langley. I love taking my time over coffee, visiting farmers markets, walking the miles of scenic trails, and maybe even hitting the links. I'm still discovering everything that Langley has to offer, from shopping to wine tours, farm experiences to professional sports, restaurants, and more. When I visit Langley, it's always something special. Explore Langley, BC this summer. Visit tourism-langley.ca for a complete guide.
With DAV's help, my world changed 100%. I was able to build a new life for myself.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories great and small.
I'm Adam Greathouse, Army veteran.
But there are more victories to be won.
My victory is just experiencing life.
Adam Greathouse, thank you for your service. May your victories inspire many more. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
I'm Rafael Romo in Tel Aviv, Israel. This is CNN.
You could put Jesus Christ up for Speaker of the House and he still wouldn't get 217.
Welcome to day 12 of a paralyzed House. I've got new reporting this morning on Jim Jordan's quickly narrowing path to the speakership. A senior Republican House member tells me he has spoken to 20 Republicans who are vowing to block Jordan if he forces a vote on Tuesday. He can only afford to lose 4. A big reason why? Republicans don't want to reward the hardliners who ousted Kevin McCarthy and sunk Steve Scalise. This member told me we can't reward this behavior. He said we can't let a small group be dictators. But another source familiar with the matter says Jordan has had positive conversations with his colleagues this weekend and is ready to force that Tuesday vote. Jordan believes he can eventually convince the holdouts to back him. Our panel is back. Leanne, you're in the hallways every day with me, talking to these members, getting a sense of where they are. What do you think of Jordan's strategy, if he goes through with this Tuesday vote, potentially to dare those members to go up and vote for somebody else at this time?
Well, as one senior Republican aide told me, it's risky because many people, I should say, who I talk to, say that Jordan does not have the votes and that he's not going to get the votes. There is a lot of hard feelings. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of, disarray within the Republican Party. So I think that the question is, some people want him to have this vote just to put people on the record, see where everyone stands, how much support he is lacking. There's another Republican who told me that it is actually very dangerous to put a vote on the floor to show how many people would vote against Donald Trump, because Donald Trump isn't backing Jordan, and against Jim Jordan. But so there's a lot of political calculations to be had, but ultimately this party has been unable to govern, to function, and do the easiest thing possible, which is supposed to be elect its leader.
I mean, there's just something genuinely funny at this point, actually, about somebody having the strategy of put this vote on the floor and dare people to vote against the nominee for Speaker of the House, right? Like, we've seen this plot several times. People are fully willing to do that. It should be baked into the sort of strategic calculations of the people involved here. And look, I think, we heard this in your the reporting that you just outlined. Basic problem here is it's not really clear what the Republican conference wants to do with power, right? That if they had a governing agenda that had some urgency and consensus support of the party, somebody would be able to make the case that the longer we spend chasing our own tail in the process of electing a speaker, that is putting off our opportunity to do X, Y, and Z for the American people. But what is that agenda?
And look, that's such a great point, because sometimes people say that they'd be better in the minority. A lot of these members are just used to the minority, not actually putting forward a governing agenda, which has been so difficult in this Congress. So there's a lot of possibilities how this could play out. Maybe Jordan forces his vote. Maybe he drops out. There has a conference meeting, I'm told, tomorrow evening. House Republicans are expected to meet. They're expected to discuss their way forward. We'll see how that goes here. There's also the possibility that others could jump in if Jordan drops out. Some names have been floated, Congressman Mike Johnson, Congressman Mark Green, Byron Donalds, Tom Emmer, Patrick McHenry, who's the interim speaker, even former Speaker Kevin McCarthy himself. The problem is that none of them seem possible to get 217 votes, which is really the underlying problem in all of this.
Right, and to Alex's point, if Israel being attacked by Hamas, I think there was some thought that after that happened, that maybe that would rally Republicans to move very quickly to try to find a speaker, and that didn't even get them to unify and find a speaker, and they left for the weekend. And one House Republican texted me saying that the fact that they can't even get a speaker and be able to pass aid for Israel sends the wrong signal to adversaries that democracy can't work. So some of those Republicans that are more moderates are very concerned about the signal this sends to allies and adversaries abroad.
And the distrust is just so palpable. I mean, there are members who just simply don't want to support another candidate the hardliners support, because why should we reward them, is the thinking among them. I just want to get a sense of just how much frustration there is among Republicans, and they're airing that out publicly.
How does that make you guys look?
Makes us look like a bunch of idiots.
This is petty, and I'm getting freaking tired of it.
We're a ship that doesn't have a rudder right now, and I'm thoroughly disappointed in the process.
This is not responsible. We need to elect a speaker.
We've allowed emotion to get in the way of logic.
People are looking for a perfect system. They shouldn't be looking at the U.S. House right now.
I mean, that's the issue. Being able to get these guys to agree when they're all pointing at each other.
And they all have different interests, and some of them have the interest of just getting attention and being on TV, and that incentive structure, the old incentive structure of wanting to work your way up into leadership or to committees or having earmarks for your district, all of those incentives are broken, and now the incentives are get attention and get donations and become a celebrity and maybe get a cable contract. And when those are the incentives, then everybody is on an island.
But then play to your base, because primary politics really drive so much within the House. And it's particularly among those members who voted to oust. There were 8 who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy, the historic, unprecedented vote that happened almost 2 weeks ago now. And I got a chance to catch up with several of them, asking them about concerns, blowback that they may have gotten because of the fact that the House is paralyzed. They can't add done anything until they elect a speaker, but they say no regrets.
Mr. Rosenthal, do you regret your vote at all to oust Speaker McCarthy?
We've made a lot of progress in there today. I really feel good.
No regrets?
No regrets, no. Follow the rules. That's the rules of Congress, and that's what we got.
I think it was the right call, and I think we're going to come out of this process stronger, a fighting Republican force.
The way my voters feel, they look at the country, they look at the direction that we're going, and they don't think that we get out of this without pain or discomfort, and neither do I.
But listen to how a swing district Republican, Don Bacon, feels about the position that those members put him in.
It hurts the country, it hurts Congress, it's hurting our party. They're putting us in a bad hole for next November.
Does it put a swing district like yours at risk?
Yeah, it does. These guys want to be in the minority. That's exact. I think they would prefer that, because they can just vote no and yell and scream all the time.
I mean, there's a real fear that this all could cost them the House.
Oh, absolutely. The DCCC Democrats are watching this very closely. They don't even have to intervene in it because they know the challenges that Republicans are bringing upon themselves. They have not been able to prove that they're able to govern anything that's monumental they've done with the help of Democrats, which ultimately got Kevin McCarthy to lose his position. And that is ultimately some of the challenge with Jim Jordan, too, as being the speaker. Some of these swing state Biden district Republicans think that Jim Jordan cannot come to their district to raise money for them, that it's only going to alienate those swing voters that they need in order to win. And so there's just so many complications here, so many layers. I don't see how
the Republicans pull it together and unify over someone in the next few days.
We'll see. Another question is, do they try to prop up interim Speaker Patrick McHenry, something that could potentially be Democratic support to do? What do Democrats want in exchange? Like Hakeem Jeffries suggested, give them more power in the legislative process, something the Republicans don't want to give up. But those types of discussions will get more serious the longer this drags out. All right, coming up, Trump under fire from fellow Republicans for his latest comments on Israel.
Okay, everyone, our mission is to provide complete balanced nutrition for strength and energy.
Ensure with 27 vitamins and minerals, nutrients for immune health, and Ensure Complete with 30 grams of protein.
She found it. The feeling of finding the psoriasis treatment she's been looking for. Sotyktu is the first of its kind once daily pill for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. For the chance at clear or almost clear skin. It's like the feeling of finding your back is back. Or finding psoriasis can't deny the splendor of these thighs. Once daily Sotyktu is proven to get more people clearer skin than the leading pill. Don't take if you're allergic to Sotyktu. Serious reactions can occur. Sotyktu can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB. Serious infections, cancers including lymphoma, muscle problems, and changes in certain labs have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, liver or kidney problems, high triglycerides, or had a vaccine or plan to. Sotyktu is a TYK2 inhibitor. TYK2 is part of the JAK family. It's not known if Sotyktu has the same risks as JAK inhibitors. Find what plaque psoriasis has been hiding. Ask your dermatologist about Sotyktu for clearer skin. So clearly you. Sotyktu.
Why did we choose Safelite? We were loading our SUV when crack. Safelite came right to us, and we could see exactly when they'd arrive with a replacement we could trust. That service the way we want it.
Safelite repair, Safelite replace.
With the Freestyle Libre 2 system, know your glucose level and where it's headed. No finger sticks needed. Manage your diabetes with more confidence. Freestyle Libre 2. Try it for free at freestylelibre.us.
Your best defense against erosion and cavities is strong enamel. Nothing beats it. New Pro Enamel Active Shield actively shields the enamel to defend against erosion and cavities. I think that this product is a game changer for my patients. It really works.
Former President Donald Trump responded to the Hamas attacks on Israel like few others, praising Hezbollah and criticizing the Israeli Prime Minister.
And they said, gee, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack from the north, because that's the most vulnerable spot. I said, wait a minute. You know, Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart. The press doesn't like when they say it. He has been hurt very badly because of what's happened here. He was not prepared. He was not prepared, and Israel was not prepared. And under Trump, they wouldn't have had to be prepared. Look at what we did for them.
Republican presidential candidates are not known to equivocate in their support for Israel. So as Republican rivals who have been slow to attack him in the past now were quick to pounce.
Bibi congratulated Biden in November. That's why he did it. He hates Netanyahu because of that. That's about him.
You pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and those who do will prosper. I guess the former president just disagrees with that. I don't know where he's coming from. He's just wrong.
He's living in the past, he's living with the headlines of the past, and he's making it all about him.
This is almost like a redux of when they attacked him over his abortion comments. Israel, obviously, much different situation, a very serious situation that's happening right now in that country. But is there any reason to think that this could have any impact on the race?
Well, first of all, no. And second, the clip that you played at the top with him saying, you know, Hezbollah is very smart, the media doesn't like it when you say that. It's that second part of that quote that's so revealing, right? That, I mean, it's comical, the notion that you have a candidate saying, I will praise Hezbollah, even though the media doesn't like it. But it's just core to the Trump brand, going back to 2015, that he will stick his finger in the eye of the media, whether it's about John McCain, or whether it's the Access Hollywood tape, or whether it's about praising a violent militant group, that he will go there and other people won't. And there's a lot of voters in the Republican Party that will fully embrace that premise.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not known for his empathy, and obviously this is an incredibly devastating situation that's playing out in Israel. But just listen to how he dealt with it. He was talking about it here.
Because this is the worst microphone I think I've ever had. I hope you can hear me back there. Justin, don't pay the bill for this mic. And then I don't pay a bill and they say, Trump doesn't pay his contractors, you know. It's unbelievable. It's a rotten, lousy mic. The state of it, but it's not my deal. You don't have a good mic, it's a very difficult deal. You walk out for 2 weeks, you're talking, you say, what the hell happened to his voice? The state of Israel is a blessing to the world. Our prayers are with them now.
This is classic. This is just classic Trump. Every part of this is classic Trump. Complaining about the microphone, complaining about the staging, calling dictators and despots and terrorists smart so that he can say that someone who, generally the world community is on the side of is dumb. He uses the same phraseology for President Xi, for President Putin, and now he does it for Hezbollah. And he's not punished for it.
Yeah, I mean, he's not.
No,
not punished by the base, but
he's
he
not
could
punished
be
by the
in
base.
general.
Right. I mean, you could see the ads.
He also successfully transitioned the Republican Party from being anti-Russia to pro-Putin in the course of his 4 years as president. So we'll see what his base and his followers.
Yeah, I mean, and look at the polls show that it won just this past week. 59% Republican voters support him, 13% for Ron DeSantis, and 10% for Haley. Ramaswamy, 7%. So he is still dominating this race. What was interesting that some of these Republicans had a donor summit in Texas with billionaires, including Harlan Crow, trying to unite the donors behind one of these alternative anti-Trump candidates, but they're not having much success in that.
No, they aren't. And Republican strategists and consultants that I've talked to across all these battleground states so far have mentioned that they don't think that any type of effort to unite the party behind one Republican candidate is going to work. They say that that's something that the party has been talking about for months, and it hasn't materialized. So a lot of them are kind of resigned to the fact that they think that Trump is going to be the inevitable nominee. And things that are happening this week, whether it's him praising Hezbollah or him backing Jordan and the House GOP not being able to get together, Democrats see a lot of opportunity there for their general election strategy.
Just huge opportunities for Democrats in the general election. I do think the message that you heard from the other Republican candidates there is one that they should have been delivering as soon as this race started, right? Which is, it's not even attacking Donald Trump on the basis of ideology. It's just saying Donald Trump is all about Donald Trump, and I am about the serious stuff that's going on in the country and the world. And it's a little late now for that message.
Yeah, we'll see. So much to play out. Thank you guys all for joining us this busy Sunday morning. And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics Sunday, a live State of the Union with Jake Tapper up next. We'll have the latest news out of Israel, so please stay with CNN. Thanks again for sharing your Sunday morning with us. See you next time.
When migraine strikes, you're faced with a choice. Ride it out with the trade-offs of treating, or push through the pain and symptoms. With Ubrelvy, there's another option. One dose works fast to eliminate migraine pain. Treat it anytime, anywhere, without worrying where you are or if it's too late.
Do not take with strong CYP3A4 inhibitors. Allergic reactions to Ubrelvy can happen. Most common side effects were nausea and sleepiness.
Migraine pain relief starts with you. Ask about Ubrelvy. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Can we get real clear about life with psoriasis?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Is your treatment leaving you with uncontrolled symptoms? Like the cover-it-ups and brush-it-offs?
Enough with good enough.
Don't stay hiding or hurting. When your lotions and creams don't do enough to help treat the inflammation beneath the skin causing plaques and pain, it's time to get real about psoriasis so your dermatologist can help you get clear. Make the appointment and ask about Real Clear Skin.
Teeth sensitivity is so common. Immediately it feels like somebody's poking directly on the nerve. I recommend Sensodyne. Sensodyne toothpaste goes inside the tooth and calms the nerve down. And my patients say, doc, it really works.
Hi, I'm Ideal and I lost 90 pounds on Golo. I struggled with weight loss and weight gain my entire life. With all the yo-yo dieting I did in the past, I would lose 20, 30, 50 pounds just to gain them over and over again. In 1 year, I've lost 5 sizes and I'm on my way to lose another 3. With Golo, I can do it.
Change your life at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com.
At Consumer Cellular, our customer service team is based here in America.
America?
America.
From sea to shining sea.
Beautiful.
Neither snow-capped mountains
unexpected detours with a 20-foot drainage pipe can stop the ruggedly capable Telluride X Pro from getting you to your dinner reservation on time. Kia, movement that inspires.
Does someone who threatens Putin's power ever die unintentionally in Russia?
I don't think so. He just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't.
The Source with Caitlin Collins. Tomorrow at 9.
Alright, let's try this. COVID has been a really long fight, and it's been especially tough on kids. It's been a rough transition for all of us.
Right now, as a father, I want to give the best tools to protect my kids.
So what can we do to get back to that sense of normalcy?
Many parents are asking if it is worth it to get their kids vaccinated against COVID.
The answer is absolutely yes.
My own sons, who are 6 and 8 years old, had their COVID vaccine.
It's an added layer of protection to keep kids from getting any type of severe illness or complications from a COVID infection. A lot of parents are also wondering if the vaccines are safe. Yes, it's safe and effective for children.
Definitely safer than a COVID infection.
Children get a smaller dosing than adults do.
So if you have questions or concerns about the vaccine, that's okay.
We're here to help. We have the tools we need to protect kids and help them stay healthy and all get through this together.
This is CNN, the world's news network.
Closed captioning brought to you by Gilt. Visit Gilt.com today for up to 70% off designer brands.
Gilt has the designers that get your heart racing. At insider prices, new every day. Hurry, they'll be gone in a flash. Designer sales at up to 70% off. Shop Gilt.com today.
Next stages of war. 9 days after the brutal terrorist attack by Hamas, Israel ramps up for a ground war in Gaza.
It's only the beginning.
But how will civilians, including Americans, avoid the violence? Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Herzog, joins me live next. And then, Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Marco Rubio. Plus, on edge, as President Biden strongly backs Israel.
We will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack.
A divide over the war is splintering the Republican field.
Israel was not ready.
We need to have Israel's back.
How would a Republican commander-in-chief approach the Middle East? Former UN ambassador and presidential candidate Nikki Haley is here exclusively ahead. And House of Cards, as U.S. officials promise Israel more support, House Republicans are still at odds over their choice for Speaker. With Congress paralyzed, will they be able to deliver aid? Hello, I'm Dick Tapper in Washington, where the state of our union is rather terrified that this brutal war between Israel and Hamas is about to get much bigger and much worse. More desperation in the Middle East this morning. This was the scene after an Israeli strike in Gaza just hours ago as people rushed to save survivors stuck under the rubble. Now the Israeli government says after 8 days of a brutal air campaign, it is now preparing, quote, significant ground operations, a reminder that Hamas embeds itself within the Palestinian population. In response to the devastating terrorist attacks in which 1,000 Israelis were slaughtered, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and that was, of course, accompanied by the kidnapping of more than 100 innocent people from Israel. In this hour, Israel is warning the Lebanese group Hezbollah, which the U.S. considers to be a terrorist group, about any further escalations from the north after the two sides exchanged fire earlier today. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of innocent civilians in Gaza, population 2.3 million, are trying to flee. There are reports from inside the country that Hamas, which uses human shields, has set up blockades to stop its own people from escaping. Earlier today, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told me that Hamas is blocking civilians, including Americans, from using the only viable exit from Gaza, the Rafah crossing into Egypt's Sinai Desert. Sullivan also told me that water service has been restored by Israel to southern Gaza earlier this week. Israel cut off supplies of electricity, food, water, and medicine to Gaza until Hamas frees its hostages, including some Americans. Joining me now in Tel Aviv is CNN's Rafael Romo. Rafael, what is the mood on the ground there as Israel prepares for this next stage of the war?
Well, Jake, let me tell you, in the last few minutes, we saw 4 flashes right above us, followed by very loud booms. It was rockets launched by Hamas in our direction that were thankfully intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome, the air defense system that has been working so good here. And that gives you an idea about what's happening here. And as you can imagine, Jake, there's a lot of concern and also uncertainty, especially given the fact that the Israel Defense Forces may be on the verge of starting a ground incursion into Gaza on Saturday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited with the troops that had been deployed to the border with Gaza. He told the soldiers that the next stage is coming. Israel's military says its forces are increasing operational readiness for the next stages of the war. In a statement, it said that, quote, IDF forces are currently preparing to implement a wide range of operational offensive plans, which can include combined and coordinated strikes from the air, sea, and land. And Jake, the airstrikes on Gaza haven't stopped either. Israel claims its military killed a Hamas commander who played a key role in last Saturday's attack. There are new signs that this conflict is being followed very closely beyond Israel's borders. On social media, the Iranian mission to the United Nations warned of far-reaching consequences if Israel does not stop its attacks on Gaza. Add to the mix the fact that the Pentagon has ordered a second carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean Sea. And those two U.S. warships are not intended to join the fighting in Gaza or take part in Israel's operations. But the message, Jake, for Iran and Iranian proxies in the region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, is very clear. Do not get involved. Jake, back to you.
Rafael Romo in Tel Aviv, thank you so much. Joining me now in studio is the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Herzog. Before I start, of course, I want to offer my deepest condolences to the Israeli people about what happened 8 days ago. Just a horrific attack, a terrorist attack. I think I speak for all of my viewers and everybody at CNN when I say our hearts are just broken by what happened.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
This ground incursion that we expect in the next, can you give me any sort of sense of timing? In next week? I know you have 300,000 reservists on the border. And is it an operation to rid Hamas of its military capabilities, its terrorist capabilities, or is it an operation to destroy Hamas completely?
So, as you noted, Israel was attacked. Hamas waged war on Israel, and they carried out one of the worst terror attacks in world history, if not the worst. And we have no choice but to strike back, and we are determined to destroy the Hamas war machine so that they cannot threaten us again. We do not want to be in that game where every few years they launch war against us or provoke us. That's over. And we are determined to destroy the war machine. We are preparing the ground operation. I'm not going to go into details and timetables and all that, but we are at war and we're going to fight that war.
And what is the plan for after you accomplish the objective? What does the end state after the operation look like? Will Israel reoccupy the Gaza Strip? Will any Palestinians who fled Gaza be allowed back in?
So we have no desire to occupy or reoccupy Gaza. We have no desire to rule over the lives of over 2 million Palestinians, and certainly want people to go back to their homes. We're talking about innocent civilians. And we are doing everything we can to keep them out of harm's way, while Hamas is doing everything it can to keep them in harm's way. That's the situation we are at. I think talking about the day after is a bit premature, because crushing the Hamas war machine will require time. The question you raise are valid, and I think we will have to enter discussions with our partners, with the international community about the day after.
Haaretz editorial this week said, quote, Israel's most urgent task is to bring back the Israelis held by Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip. And they point out that your finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, reportedly argued in a cabinet meeting for Israel to, quote, strike Hamas brutally and not take the issue of the captives into account too much. And what Haaretz is arguing is, why not? Why aren't the captives, why aren't the kidnapping victims the number one priority?
Well, certainly the issue of the kidnapped Israelis and others is very much is high on our agenda. We're well aware of that. We're still in the process of forming a picture, understanding how many people are there, what is their condition, what is their identity, and certainly this is a consideration. I don't want to comment about statements by this or that politician. All we say is that Hamas perpetrated a war crime and crime against humanity in taking hostages, and that we hold them accountable to any harm that comes to any of the hostages.
Hamas is claiming that Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 13 of the hostages in Gaza. Do you have any idea if that's true?
I don't know. I would be very careful about what they say. There's a lot of misinformation and propaganda there. So I would be very careful and I would take what they say with a grain of salt.
You said a week ago it was premature to discuss any deals for exchanging hostages. Has that changed? Is there any discussion about any prisoner swaps, hostage swaps?
We're not at that phase, and as I said, we're in the middle of war, and we still have to know how many hostages there are and what is their condition.
So you obviously distinguish between Hamas and the 2.3 million Palestinians, many of whom are prisoners of Hamas in Gaza. Israel has warned the 1.1 million in northern Gaza to evacuate. And the U.S. officials, the U.S. has even said that's a tall order. The UN has said it's impossible to get them all out. What's the latest on these humanitarian quarters and letting the innocent victims of Hamas in many ways get out?
So I'm glad you asked the question. Our enemy is Hamas. It's not the Palestinian people. It's not the innocent civilians.
But many of them are dying because of Israeli bombardment.
They are used by Hamas as human shields. That's why we call on them to leave their homes, because as we intensify the war against Hamas and Hamas war machine, we don't want to harm any civilians. And we ask them to move to the south of Gaza. Hamas, in contrast, is asking them to stay, is forcing them to stay.
Right, they're setting up blockades.
Yeah. They are confiscating car keys and so on. We see all that. They want to use them as human shields. Already 700,000 people left their homes, and we are in the process of establishing a humanitarian zone, a big humanitarian zone in the southern part of Gaza. With the UN, we're working very closely with UN agencies so that they will go there, it will be a humanitarian zone, and they will get all the essential provisions like water, medicine, food, and things like that. We are in that process.
But are the Egyptians letting, first of all, we heard that Hamas wouldn't let Americans trapped in Gaza out the Rafah crossing.
That's true. We are in the process of facilitating their exit. They're already in the crossing, and Hamas preventing them from leaving Gaza.
And those are the Americans, and then we know that al-Sisi has been reluctant to let the Palestinians out of the Rafah gate because he doesn't want a refugee camp. He doesn't want them going into Egypt.
As I explained, the humanitarian zone that we are establishing with the UN, I want to emphasize, we work very closely with UN agencies. Humanitarian agencies is inside Gaza, in the southern part of Gaza, be able to host hundreds of thousands of people. They get all the food and provisions and essentials. That's where we are.
And you want aid to be able to get into Gaza, not just people getting out of Gaza. You want aid in.
Yes, I'm talking about aid getting to a humanitarian zone that we are creating. And again, I want to emphasize, we are doing everything we can to get innocent civilians out of harm's way, while Hamas is doing everything they can to get them in harm's way.
And I know you want to punish Hamas by cutting off supplies, electricity, water, etc., but that is hurting civilians. It is.
Let me explain. We're not punishing Hamas. They wage war on us.
I understand that, but when you cut off all those other things, it also hurts the
people. We do not cut electricity to Hamas. All electricity power lines leading from Israel to Gaza were destroyed by Hamas rockets. Let's be clear on that. We're not punishing anybody. We are waging war on Hamas. That's the reality. It's a war zone. They destroyed the only crossing from Israel to Gaza. They destroyed all the electricity lines. They destroyed the water line from Israel to Gaza. That's the situation. We are operating under international law, and any essentials that the Palestinian population needs will facilitate. That's why we're establishing this safe zone.
All right, Ambassador Herzog, thank you so much for being with us, and I am praying for peace.
So are we. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. For more, I'm going to talk to the Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Marco Rubio, of Florida, about what he is learning. He will join us live next.
Whether you come to Key West for an in-depth history lesson, or you just want to skim the surface, Key West's story is richer, more colorful, more substantial, and quirkier than you ever imagined. Key West, close to perfect, far from normal.
Today is the day you graduate from Southern New Hampshire University.
I've been waiting for this day my whole life.
The fact that I get to walk across the stage and get my degree, it's honestly unreal.
Don't ever stop. Keep on believing in yourself. It is never too late.
If you're out there and wondering if you could be an SNHU graduate, today is the day to find out.
Visit snhu.edu.
I have moderate to severe Crohn's disease. Now there's Skyrizi. Feel significant symptom relief with Skyrizi, including less abdominal pain and fewer bowel movements at 4 weeks. Skyrizi is the first and only IL-23 inhibitor for Crohn's that can deliver both clinical remission and endoscopic improvement. The majority of people on Skyrizi achieve long-lasting remission at 1 year.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to. Liver problems may occur in Crohn's disease.
Ask your gastroenterologist how you can take control of your Crohn's with Skyrizi. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Dig into the gooey flavor of Bob Evans mac and cheese 2-count single-serve cups. Each serving of tender macaroni is smothered in grilled cheese. Just heat it up for a great snack or after-school treat and bring home the goodness of Bob Evans today.
Verizon Small Business Days are coming from October 16th to the 22nd. Now is the time to partner with our experts. Get started today with Verizon Business. It's your business. It's your Verizon.
Super Beats has changed my life. It does. It helps maintain my healthy blood pressure.
In my 31 years of helping people maintain healthy blood pressure, I've never seen a compound this effective. Super Beats is a leading nitric oxide breakthrough for blood pressure and energy support.
Know that I'm using a product from nature that helps me maintain good blood pressure. It's a win-win.
Yeah, Super Beats is a game changer.
It gets me through my tough days. I want to be a present dad, and so for me to have the energy to stay up with my 5 kids, I need Super Beats.
Since taking Super Beats, I have felt a tremendous surge of energy.
And this is what comes from the increased blood flow.
It'll give you that sense of well-being. It'll give you that sense of energy. That sense, hey, I want to go and conquer the world.
I could live without Super Beats, but I wouldn't want to.
Discover what Super Beats can do for you. With our clinically studied plant-based formula, you too can harness the power of nature's most incredible source of blood pressure and heart-healthy energy support. Find out how to get a free 30-day supply plus free shipping at superbeats.com.
Closed captioning brought to you by InVetHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
Welcome back to State of the Union as we enter day 8 of this war and what appears to be an imminent ground invasion of Gaza by Israeli forces. There remain so many outstanding questions about what role the United States should play in not only aiding a key ally, Israel, but rescuing the Americans currently being held hostage by Hamas. Joining us now is Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. He is the Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. So you've seen the top intelligence. What should we as Americans be prepared to see when a ground invasion happens, which we're all preparing ourselves to witness?
Well, I think
again, never commenting on intelligence specifically, but I think much of the commentary you've seen out there, things people have been saying, is accurate. The first is, an incursion into Gaza to try to root out Hamas. I believe the Israelis have the ability to do it, especially with our resupply role that we're going to play, but it won't be an easy task. I mean, there's no doubt Hamas has booby-trapped the place. They have taken a defensive posture, and they're hiding behind civilians. I mean, we've seen the reporting just today, open source media, about how they're preventing civilians from moving and people from getting out of the way. So it's part of their tactics. I think obviously related to that is what is Hezbollah and behind them Iran planning to do as a result of this. As this moves forward, as this goes on, and look, wars are painful, difficult things. They're not pleasant. They're not the kinds of things that anyone should be cheering on. But sometimes, unfortunately, in human affairs, they become necessary, in particular to get rid of this terrorist group. What is the reaction going to be from Hezbollah? Are they going to launch a second front? Because I think that changes this dynamic substantially in very serious ways. This is a very delicate moment, a necessary moment, unfortunately, but it's also one that we shouldn't take lightly. I mean, it's deeply troubling at the same time as we know what Israel has to do here.
How long should Israel and the world be prepared for this war to last? And what do you think is the end goal? You heard the ambassador say that Israel does not want to reoccupy Gaza, but if they get rid of Hamas, what happens? Who takes control of Gaza?
Well, and that's a difficult question, right? The Egyptians certainly don't want any part of assuming any of the responsibility here. Understand, Hamas is a descendant, an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they certainly don't want that in their country either, which complicates this further. I can't speak to Israeli tactics or what their plans are after the fact. I certainly think that's going to be one of the things that's going to be problematic. As far as the time frame that's involved, I don't know if anybody can tell you, but I'm pretty certain, I think the Israelis would say it, everybody would say it, is this is not one of those 72-hour or 2 or 3 week deals here. I mean, this is going to take some time. Hamas is deeply embedded. They hide in tunnels, and it's not just Hamas. There are Islamic Jihad and other groups that are involved in this as well. So this is going to be a complicated process. I think Israel, with our support, has the ability to carry out the job, but it's going to be painful. It's going to be costly all around. They know that. They've messaged that. And I think this is a months type situation, not days or weeks type situation from everything I've seen. And I hope I'm wrong, obviously. I hope it's quicker than that, but that's the direction everyone seems to believe this will go.
Governor and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley was on the show earlier talking about how the leaders of Arab nations, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Qatar, et cetera, could be doing so much more and don't. Obviously talk a lot about the Palestinians at other times, but really pony up very little when it comes to actual effort. What could they be doing? Not only in getting Hamas to release the hostages, but in terms of helping the Palestinian people have a thriving democracy on the banks of the Mediterranean, if they wanted to, if there was some sort of Arab League security force that could help with that effort.
Well, and I think one of the things we're learning, okay, and we're reminded of is, I don't care what country you are, no country in the world wants mass migrations of people from other places. I mean, it was a mass migration of refugees that changed the dynamic of Lebanon completely, re-altered the demographics, plunged the country into a long civil war, and has brought it to the point it is today. Egypt doesn't want that. Jordan doesn't want that. None of these countries want that. None of them are phoning up and saying, send everybody to us.
Right.
So I think certainly they could play a role in that regard in terms of helping accommodate people coming there and providing that. The other is obviously the role they play in some cases, some of these countries, as being supporters of Hamas in the past. Look, the Qataris, I think, are a strategic ally and someone we work with on many issues, but they've also been a supporter of Hamas. Now, my understanding is they're trying to play a constructive role in this regard, but at the same time, I think we have to, this should be a lesson to all these nations and governments, that if you're trying to play an outsized role in the region by having these groups that you have relationships with, it will end up backfiring on you, particularly a group like this that is committed to the establishment of an Islamic fundamentalist Palestinian state that stretches from the Mediterranean to the Jordan. So I hope this will be a lesson that groups like this should not be coddled or encouraged. the hope is to find responsible actors that you can partner with and engage with in the region. That just hasn't existed, which is what makes this part of the world so difficult. And that's why I think we have to take things one step at a time in that regard. And step one is to eliminate Hamas as a military threat. They simply cannot continue to be a military threat after what they've done. And then there are a lot of complicated questions, and anyone who tells you they have somewhere in their jacket a simple plan to fix all this in the long term is not being honest. There are a lot of complex twists and turns and difficult decisions to be made, but the one that's pretty clear at the front end is Hamas has to be eliminated as a military threat.
So you said that any civilian casualties in Gaza are 100% the fault of Hamas because Hamas launched the attack 8 days ago and is currently using these civilians as human shields, embedding within the populace, etc., preventing Palestinians from fleeing. Still, it is an ugly reality, an ugly fact that 700 Palestinian kids have reportedly been killed in the last 8 days. Do you think that Israel has done enough to try to avoid civilian casualties in Gaza? Is there anything more Israel could be doing? Anything more Egypt could be doing? Anything more the U.S. could be doing?
Well, and I think those efforts are underway. I think you've seen Israel, for example, try to, and has been doing it from the very beginning, telling people to get out of there, to move. And you've seen some efforts to move. You've seen efforts from Hamas to prevent that from happening. Ultimately, the other thing to remember here is, look, wars are terrible, ugly things. And unfortunately, in human affairs, they are necessary sometimes because nations have a right to self-defense. Hamas cannot be allowed to continue to exist. And they follow the same pattern over and over again. They kill Israelis, and then they run, and they hide in their tunnels. They put civilians in front of them. Civilians get killed. The world screams at Israel, you need to stop. Israel stops, and then Hamas comes back and kills more Israelis in the future. That pattern cannot continue. As far as what more can be done, I think a lot of those efforts are in place to ask as many people as possible to move to the south. There's reports this morning, the Israelis say they've turned on the water again, and hopefully some of the power to that part where that could be a safe haven. But it's important to remember here, Israel is not saying we are going to attack civilians for the purpose of inflicting terror. They are trying to target Hamas strongholds. That's what they're targeting. If civilians are in those strongholds, it's because Hamas has placed themselves there, unfortunately, sadly, tragically. But nonetheless, what choice does Israel have? They cannot coexist with this element that is willing to do what we just saw a week ago yesterday.
Lastly, the House of Representatives is now on day 12 without a speaker, which hinders all of Congress's ability to do anything. It's unclear whether any of the current candidates are going to be able to get 217 votes. This means that the House can't even pass a resolution condemning Hamas, let alone support for Israel, let alone all of Congress being able to pass any new aid packages for Israel or for Ukraine. At what point does this chaos within the House Republican Conference start to jeopardize national security or American leadership in the world? And what is your message to your House Republican colleagues?
Well, I don't vote in the House. I'm not a House member. I don't think they listen or care what senators think about their affairs. I can't control what happens there, so they need to obviously work through that process and figure it out, and I hope that they do, obviously. Well, here's the one thing I do want to say with Israel. Much of our aid and support to Israel is codified. In fact, we codified it with my bill along with Senator Coons 2 years ago. That doesn't mean we're not going to have to come back at some point and put additional funding, but luckily, the reason why we codified that support is because I always suspected and feared that a crisis involving Israel would move much faster than the ability of Congress to respond. At some point here soon, we will need a speaker, we will need a functioning House, and there are things we're going to have to do to help Israel, including fund the government in less than 35 days, or keep it open. So that's all going to have to happen. And, I'll watch and hope, like everybody else, that the House will be able to work through that process. I'm not going to try to steer it or influence it. I don't think I have any influence over what the House does. And hopefully we'll be in a situation here soon where that won't be a factor. But the good news is the administration right now has ample authorities to do what they are doing. And that is position not just the equipment that's already accessible, but resupply should Israel need it here over the next couple weeks.
I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you anticipated some of this clownishness, it sounds like. So you're to be commended for your
A song by Paul Beckman, Polly Rainbow Song. Also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world. Created October 15th, 2023. I'm not feeling so good myself. I'm suffering, moaning and groaning. I'm going to go to the hospital soon. Here we go. Gonna restore the water in the Gaza Strip. Gonna restore the water in the Gaza Strip. Gonna restore the water, I've heard them say. Well, let's give a big hooray. Restoring the water to the Palestinians. Restoring the water to the Palestinians. Restoring the water to the Palestinians. Oh. Ho, 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 ho,